Hey, what's up guys? All right, another knife video. This one's going to be on the FU42. Deja vu. Yeah, this is going to be the last, the very last video I'm going to do on the FU42. Of course, I say that, but I've already said that before. These were actually sent to me a long time ago, and I wanted to do this video because it was sent to me by a viewer. And I have a note here which I'm going to read to you, and talking about their opinions on it. And originally there was some question as to whether these knives were basically these counterfeits that came in and doctored up and resold. Now I've gone over this a couple different times. Some things were conclusive, some things were inconclusive. These were some of the original ones. Okay, so this kind of sheds some light on the whole subject. This one right here was the counterfeit that was sent to me. Okay, so this one's not the FU42. These are two variations on the FU42, one Damascus one and one original one. And we're gonna look at some of the details here and just go over, comparing them. And there's one interesting thing in here which will obviously prove something, which you'll see in a minute. But anyway, here's the note. And it reads, cutlerylover. Thanks for taking a look at these knives. My intention here is to back up the claim that I made about the prototype having a knockoff Benchmade blade. Look closely and you should be able to see the tips of the wings. If you'd like to review the Damascus knife, that would be great. I was not impressed with it. I assembled it myself so I could get a better deal on the price, which was under $80 for the parts. The handles would not go together with all the hardware and blade out of the box. I had to do some filing. Even after that, there are still only 3 washers in it. The latch came apart after a week of flipping over my bed. I put it away after that, only to mess with it from time to time now. Originally, I was looking for a unique, dependable, and affordable knives that my students could use for martial arts training. We have gone in a different direction as a result of what I have seen so far from Exile Cutlery. It really is a shame. I had high hopes for it. Thanks again. I look forward to more great videos. In warm regards, Charles Buckner, and he actually runs a martial arts school, so there's some information. There's a little seal for his studio. But anyway, yeah, he originally wanted to get some different Balisongs for his students. These were a very affordable price and, highly touted at the time when they first showed up on the scene. And obviously, as you heard from the letter, he's quite disappointed in them. All right, so let's look at some details here and compare the 3 Balisongs. The 2 on your right are the original FU42s from Exile Cutlery. The one on the left is the Counterfeit, okay? The purpose of this video is to show you the last conclusive information, basically proving the fact that the FU42s are in fact pimped counterfeits. That's all they are. The newer generations and the old versions or I should say the newer versions that I've had in older videos have been definitely more convincing, and it was a little more confusing for me to see the fact that the entire knife, not just the handles, but the blade itself, was also modded from these original Chinese counterfeits, okay? So the one on the left is your counterfeit, the one in the middle is your original FU42, and then here's the original Damascus version. All right, and there are some things in here which I'm going to show you that are conclusive that these both came from these counterfeits. They were just modded up and pimped. The one concern was with the sheaths. I don't have the sheath for these 2 FU42s, but what's very, very consistent with all of them is that when you get them with the sheath, as opposed to the parts kit, there's always rip stitching right here. And what do you know? This is where the tag is, the fake Benchmade tag from the counterfeit. So the fact that the stitching's ripped right here where they would have just ripped this tag off, it's way too coincidental. All right, so that's very conclusive. They don't use the original boxes, obviously. The box is really, and I showed this in the first video, very convincing. Looks just like a Benchmade box. This one happens to be falling apart because the glue wasn't very good. But after all that, they screwed up on the tiniest little thing right here on the back. It says Benchmade Knife Company. Little typo there, C-O-M-P-S-N-Y. So close, China. So close, but yet so far. So anyway, yeah, the sheath, like I said, I can pretty much conclude with confidence that all the FU42 sheaths came from these original counterfeit sheaths, okay? Now, on to the knives themselves. The one on the left here is going to be the counterfeit, okay? You have a spring latch, although the spring itself is kind of cheesy and cheap. It does work, it's very functional. And what we'll notice on this one is this mimics of course, the Benchmade Model 42 in a lot of different ways. The countersunk holes, the overall size, the feel of it, the spring latch itself, the design of the spring latch, the markings On the back, the tank stamp here is 440C. If I get that to focus, there we go. 440C, Benchmade USA. All right, as we flip this around, you'll see the Balisong logo with the number 42 underneath it, and then the R for the registered trademark. And even the pivot, the hardware here is correct. You have the Torx on the front, and then just the presentation female side of the pins on the back. Okay, so very close counterfeit. If you didn't know much about the 42s, or if you never personally had one and someone sold this, they listed this for 300 bucks, you'd buy it. Most of you out there would just think it's a Benchmade forever and you wouldn't know the difference. It's a very convincing counterfeit. Okay, now let's compare this to the first FU42. Now I'm squeezing this together, you'll notice there's no spring latch. They have their modded exiled cutlery latch on here. I told you I like this latch system. Okay, it's got basically a ball bearing in there with a spring and 3 detents. So there's 3 basic positions that they in, and they kind of click in those positions. I like this latch. It's sturdy, it's heavy duty. I would imagine that these are machined in the USA. Okay, or even if they're not machined here, they're machined separately and added to this knife. There's nothing wrong with the latch. I think the latch is great. However, I can tell you conclusively that the latch was just added to this knife to make it appear as if this is a whole new knife. This knife is this knife with that latch, if that makes any sense to you. Now, as we open this up, let's take a look at the latch first. First thing I want to talk about here. There we go. All right, so comparing these two, you'll notice that the hardware on the latch handle, okay, or bite handle, is the same. Now, if we get in real close, you'll notice that the heads are a little different. All right, but on the FU42, which is this one that's shaking, you notice the top screw right there is a different Torx screw than the other ones. All right, now we turn this on the side, you'll notice that they obviously put in their aftermarket piece that works with their aftermarket latch, okay, their proprietary latch system. Whereas the original has this pin across, okay, which your spring's connected to, and it's also connected to the base of the spring latch. All right, so that's why your latch stays in that position. When it's turning, you're putting pressure on that the spring, and it wants to spring back. Doesn't matter which way you go. That's how that works, right? Their proprietary latch system right there still uses this pin. All right, so that's still the same, right? But obviously the hardware has been changed out. So not a big deal. Something else you'll notice as we go down is the pivot hardware is a little bit different. The front, although they're both Torx, the FU42 has a separate set of Torx screws, not the original. And on the back, instead of having just the presentation female side of the pins, you actually have flathead screws, and they're not flush with the handle. All right, they stick up a little bit, as you can see. All right, something else I want to show on these original, this is the original FU42. I believe the handles are different. They do not match up with this original counterfeit, okay? The handles on the first generations may very well have been handmade through Exile Cutlery. There's a couple things that tell me that. First of all, on the newer versions, the handles matched up with those marks on the channel. You can see the counterfeits on the bottom, and it was very consistent. If you remember my old videos, we had those drill marks from the milling of the handles, right? You don't have these on the original version of the Exile Cutlery knife. Now, something else to note is that when you look at these, the holes on the side, the diameter for that hole is larger, and the countersinking is different. All right, so I can definitely say that at least this original version, these handles are not the same as those handles, okay? Now, furthermore, if you look at the bottom here, on the counterfeit, these are machine made, very crisp lines, okay? This angle here on the bottom that's, you know, rounded on both sides are very consistent. The sides are nice and flat. These handles are very much hand done. You can see there's more, let me give you a good background here. There's more taken off on this side than there is on this side. They're hand shaped. And as I turn this, you can even see that better. Now you can even see the scuffing. The scuffing was on here when the knife was new, from what I understand. Okay, and that was just from trying to shape these handles. And also the countersinking here for the latch on the counterfeit here, you can see how that's machine done. You have the square cut out and then the countersinking to match up with that head. All right, so the head locks in real nice, just like that. With the original FU42, this was very much hand done, and I don't think it's going to take much convincing to realize that. That the square, you can see where it was overcut on both sides, and then the circle looks like it was done with a file or something. All right, so very much hand done. But what's most important, and the reason why these were really sent to me, is that what was in question in the first video was the blade. I had said that, you know what, the handles look like the same, that was pretty conclusive, at least for the newer generations. But the blade, I always thought that at least they made their own blades. Well, on the original generation here, you look at this, the tang, okay, this portion right here. If I get the light right, you'll be able to see the wings from the old Benchmade logo. Okay, you can see it. Let me use this other knife as a pointer. Sorry, Gus is snoring in the background. You can see the wing right there and right there. So let me turn, actually, let me leave this here. And I'm just going to glide these back and forth so you can see the glare. Now what this tells me, obviously, was that this was originally a counterfeit blade. Now you can see the grinds right here and here. These are different. So I don't believe it was from the same maker, but it was definitely from a counterfeit. And of course, for the obvious reason of copyright infringement and the fact that they're already, you know, skating on thin ice with that kind of stuff to begin with, you really had, they obviously ground this off. Okay, whether it was just buffed off, because these markings on the counterfeits aren't really deep. They could be just laser etched on there very finely. But you can see those wings, it's definitely there. It's not a coincidental scratch or anything. It's on both sides, and it's in the right place where it looks like that's where the original markings were. So what I can conclude from this is that the first generation FU42s were definitely made up of counterfeit parts, period. The handles are kind of in question. I want to say they're probably going to be from a different counterfeit, not these specific ones. It's possible the first ones, the first generation ones, were handmade by them, you know, whoever them may be. But it's still really conclusive that the later generations use these handles. So, you know, it's a parts knife. That's all it is. I still think the quality is great. I still think that, you know, these are okay. These counterfeits really aren't that bad out of the box. They're nothing like a real Benchmade. You know, you can't even compare them. But they're really not that bad overall. But this is definitely concluded to be a parts kit. You're taking counterfeit parts, they're putting them together, and they're putting a proprietary latch system on there and making it, you know, calling it a completely different knife. Just want to also show you real quick the Damascus version here. Something to note is that this first Damascus version did not have a spring in it, nor did it had the proprietary latch, but it's missing that that piece, which I'll show you on this one. It's missing the insert here that actually allows it to stay in those positions, the first, second, or third position, okay, where the bearing is. That block is obviously missing out of here. And you can also tell that these handles on the Damascus version was the same as this, because you still have that second pin here. But they put the proprietary latch in here, but they chose not to either connect a spring to it or put in that block to make it a, you know, the new one that they have on the newer models. So, and it had the original hardware here as well. The finish on this one's also a little bit polished. I suppose they figured it's a fancy Damascus version, so let's polish up the handles. But, you know, still the same knife, and as you can see, here's the counterfeit, here's the Damascus one, and there's those exact same milling marks. Heavy on the front, as you go down the handle, they lighten up a little bit, but it's identical. All right, so these were definitely counterfeit handles. Now, as far as the blades, I don't have an example in front of me, but I do know that there were counterfeit BM42s that had Damascus blades originally too. So they're most likely is a source for these Damascus blades, but they obviously put their own stampings on here. And even more so than with the regular satin blades or satin finish, the Damascus would be very easy to buff off the fake Benchmade logo and of course put on their own. So, and then you can see their flatheads on the back, although these are even with the handle as opposed to the plain edge one, or excuse me, the regular one. So anyway, I just wanted to make a video on this. I mean, like I said, my friend Charles specifically sent these to me, and I didn't want him to do that for no reason. Obviously, he wanted to prove that the original ones were, in fact, all parts kits. This doesn't reflect what they are now, necessarily, but I can tell you that there's a very, very good chance that all the Exile Cutlery FU42s are from parts from the counterfeits themselves, whether they're buying whole counterfeits or they're sourcing from the same companies that make them. I don't know, but I can tell you conclusively that it's just, you know, it's the same knife. It's just pimped out a little bit. I do find that they flip smoother and they are better constructed with the aftermarket hardware and stuff like that. So that does make a difference. It makes it better to me. That's just personal opinion and me being honest with you. But this is the last chapter in this whole FU42 saga. I did want to make this video just to show you that it's very conclusive, and I'm completely convinced that these are just counterfeits with new logos put on them. So that's all. Just want to make a video on that. Like I said, you probably won't hear anything more about these FU42s for a long, long time. But anyway, another thanks to Charles. Appreciate that. Hopefully you find some good, decent Balisongs for you and your students for your martial arts class. There's a lot of good ones out there. I know this is a very tempting, tempting choice, I would say, because they were more affordable. But I'd probably stick with maybe some Kimuras or something along those lines, where it's still, you know, under $100 or so, in and around. But definitely a good quality and something that's not going to fall apart on you. But anyway, that's all. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate your time as always, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.